we have a special guest here. It's Miles Faulkner, who is a CEO of Blended Perspective. And the stage is yours.
Okay. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Well, all right. So Mars category report and the state of diagramming. So we're going to be mixing up some stuff here. We're going to be talking about the research, what the research says, what the data says. We're also going to be talking about diagramming as well, and a few other things. So covering off who we are, more on Mars, a little bit on solution blueprints, a bit of a sales spiel, and data. So first of all, just about us. We don't make products, we make solutions. So we long ago decided at Blended that we would just stick to being in the solution space, and we wouldn't build our own products. We've got about 210,000 Atlassian users under license, with 100 clients and an average of 2,000 users per client. So we see a lot of stuff out there, both big and small companies, and our customer base spans across pretty well all the main categories. When we talk about what is a solution for us is a foundation set of products. So you can see on the right there, Jira Confluence, Jira Service Management, a combination of third-party apps, and also what we call blueprints, synthesis blueprints, which are a set of configurations such as issue types, workflows, and a logical design that bring it all together to make a GRC solution or a PPM solution or a scaled agile solution or an integrated service management solution. So that's what we do. We are the sort of architects and solution engineers to bring all the different components together. So let's talk about the Atlassian marketplace. I think first thing that I always think is pretty interesting to think about is that it's a really big place. And the closer you get to it, the more complicated it gets. And so what we feel is that this complexity can cause challenges for customers to understand what they should be doing. And in many cases, I think if you look back at a customer's install list of apps, it often ends up as being the first people who came along and said, I want this app. And now you're stuck with this app in your system. And you may not really have wanted that particular app, or it might not be the one for you. But we're talking about 2,000 vendors, 4,000 apps, and over 1.6 million active installs. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but essentially, third-party app vendors self-categorize. The thing about self-categorization is that, if you were to do a search on diagramming in the marketplace, you would end up with 250 plus results. But there's only 3 or 4 main players in that space. So what is a customer to make of that? And in fact, we think of it analogously, the marketplace, as a fruit market, where essentially, one set of tomatoes looks like the next set of tomatoes, looks like the lemons. They're often, all the same to the customer. So we decided to have a think about what we would do about that, because as solution providers, we felt that there was this issue with it. And it was 2 years ago today, actually, or not today, but 2 years ago at the last summit, where we were all in person, that we first previewed the results of a year's worth of data from Mars, which stands for Marketplace Analytic Research Service. So we now have over 4 years worth of in-depth data on the Atlassian marketplace. We have a complete history from that time of all the transaction loads, how many instances, leveraging the publicly available information from the marketplace itself. What did we find? I don't think you would be surprised to know that there are a relatively small number of vendors, as you can see on the left, that drive, and also a relatively smaller number of apps, which drive 83% of all instances on the marketplace. So we do have a big Pareto here. So 22% of vendors drive 15% of apps, which drives 80% of all instances. So that tells us that there are vendors we need to concentrate on, right? And that tells us there's a very long tail of smaller vendors and smaller and smaller applications. The second thing that we did was we recategorized the entire marketplace. So essentially we said, you know what, we don't agree with these categories in the marketplace. They don't make sense, they're self-categorized. We're going to do it ourselves. And Joseph, who's in the corner there, my steadfast analyst, and I spent many hours just arbitrarily making decisions as to which categories these apps should be in. And we're always changing it, and we're always getting better ideas. We have a primary category, and we have a secondary category. And it's really very difficult because most of the apps in the marketplace were built to satisfy very specific needs, which sort of align to a category. But nevertheless, we did that. And what we did was we prioritized all apps with over 500 instances for categorization. So we don't have 4,000 apps that all have categories. We've been tracking just the apps that have a certain velocity in terms of growth, uniqueness, or if they've hit that 500 apps. Okay, so this is the big, wonderful diagram that categorizes the marketplace in a way that we find particularly interesting. So what you have here is a classic set of circles, a la sort of a McKinsey. The size of the circle represents the number of instances. So you can get a quick sense of what the relative kind of size of the instances are. Now, if you want to get in touch with me, it's miles@blended.net. You can come and chat to me afterwards, and we're happy to send you all this information. You can see that this measures also the number of apps in the category in terms of height, sort of. And then, in addition, we're also looking at growth in 2021. And there are some very profound things in here that I think are really, really interesting. One of them being testing. Testing has been going crazy. If you're not testing, if you're not doing testing in your instance, you're a real outlier compared to where the growth in the marketplace is. So another way to think about this information is the marketplace is like this gigantic innovations space where it reflects where people are investing their time and energy and money in functionality to live on this platform. And so what we can tell you, is that diagramming is a very, serious player. It doesn't have the same kind of growth, that some of these guys have, but it's right in the mix. But it would be remiss of me not to make note of yesterday, of the big announcement that came out this morning. So I'm sure much to Martin Siebert's, a little bit of unhappiness, but there's a new king of Confluence. I don't know whether you heard or you saw the analysis that I posted in the app stream, but Kamalatech has been purchased by AppFire, the latest in a blockbuster set of acquisitions. There's been quite a remarkable amount of consolidation in the marketplace, and so we'll be covering a lot of that in more detail on Wednesday. So how does that shake out? It shakes out that now AppFire, when combined with Kamalatech, that's the orange bar, the number of instances that Kamalatech has today on Confluence, is now ahead of the Siebert Media empire by some, I don't know, it was about 5,000, Joseph? I can't remember, something of that region. So we do these quantitative analyses so that you can understand the implications, the real meaningful implications of what's going on in the market. So let's talk about Mars diagramming. No surprises here, I'm guessing, that you would think. There are really two big guns in the diagramming space. That's Draw.io and Gliffy. And really right now, Draw.io is dominating the market. And so one of the things that we're constantly kind of wanting clients to understand is that there are lots of reasons for that. And we're going to go into the details with it. But if you're on Gliffy, you might really be part of an exercise in just, harvesting the market. But that's the situation. So Draw.io has over twice the number of instances that Gliffy has. We also track what we call version velocity. So you'll notice in the marketplace that you can actually see the versions and the X.X releases. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to understand what's going on overall in the marketplace in terms of the versions as a whole, and this actually is a macro picture. So it's showing you that over time, the versions and the number of monthly releases that are taking place. And we consider these to be X.X releases, not bug fixes, but functional releases. And so when you're looking at third-party apps and you're looking at whether you should buy one or not, you really do need to pay attention to whether in the last 6 months or 8 months, anything has been done on those apps in terms of a functional release. Because if nothing's been done in terms of a functional release, then you've got to ask yourself the question, is stability what this is about? Or is there no investment going into this application? And who is doing the investment in the applications? Who is introducing innovation? So those are also markers that we pay a close amount of attention to.
Are you able to differentiate between the ones that are just doing releases to keep up with like the data center version versus the ones that are actually doing some new functionality? Because I find that super irritating when I'm looking at them and all they're doing is you need an upgrade, but it's just keeping current versus giving any new features.
Yeah, so it is still fairly manual. So when we take a closer look at an app, we'll take a look at those. But our view of X.X releases is the majority of them have some new functionality in them. Right. When we see an X.X.1 or an X.X.2, those are usually bug or defect fixes. Yeah, usually, yeah. It's just indicative, right? I mean, it's just, if you don't see any X.X releases at all, which is, we see that. There are definitely apps out there, and there are big ones that you would think would have kind of, you know, a lot of releases. They're not doing it. And it's important as a customer to know what that means and what that's for you. And so this is this server DC view of Drawer.io versus Gliffy. And I believe it tells you the simple tale, right, of what's going on. I don't really need to amplify any further on that story. And Drawer.io versus Gliffy cloud pricing. So we also track pricing. We quantitatively track pricing for all products and apps out there. And we can tell you right from the beginning of time, you know, what was the price trend, what was the pricing strategy. So again, this analysis is available to you for any category, for any app in the marketplace. Yeah, so this is the DC pricing. And so Drawer.io and Gliffy are a little more competitively priced together, whereas you'll see a big difference on data center for Drawer.io. So I'm racing through these slides, but I just want to talk a little bit about diagramming itself, because there's a whole world about diagramming which I don't have time to touch on, but I do want to sort of give you my perspective on it. Does everybody have a diagramming app? Everybody have an app, or not everybody? Some people do, don't, yeah. Well, you know, if you're trying to sell a diagramming app, I mean, I think that really Confluence and diagramming go together, you know, extremely well. And a lot of it is to do with what is the value of diagrams in the teamwork process. You know, the left brain is very much logic and understands words and text, and the right brain is about creativity. And when the brain double processes information, such as words and diagrams, or diagrams itself, it remembers better what it's seen. There's a whole bunch of research on it. I can send you the info, but it is very valuable. And in fact, there was a fantastic study also, which again I've got much more information on, by some Australian researchers on the types of diagrams and the purpose of them, and the way you go about doing diagrams versus what you're trying to achieve. So if you want visual impact, that has a certain connotation. If you want clarity, there's a different way to do it. Perceived finishedness, so a neat and tidy finished diagram has credibility. There's a range of different ways to do diagramming, which I can talk to you about sort of another time. But a picture is worth 1,000 words. It simplifies the complexity, assures alignment, or it exposes misalignment. White space exposes risk and lack of knowledge. So if you ask for a diagram and you don't get one, or the diagram isn't very good, you can bet that the team that's working on something doesn't understand it very well. First thing I do when I'm faced with a technical problem from a team or some really hairy issue is I make everybody draw a diagram. I worked with a senior executive at a Canadian bank who had a very large, complex network. And what he used to do when there was a major problem or outage in the network is he had a big diagram which my team actually built. This diagram was 6 or 8 feet long, and it was about 5 feet high. And they had mapped every single major banking application with all the middleware, kind of all the databases, all the big firewalls, all the big connections and the big dependencies. And he didn't care. He didn't want it electronically. He wanted a big picture. And what he would do when something went wrong and somebody said, let's do this to fix it, he would get everybody in the room and he would say, you point to me where this fix is going in exactly on the diagram, and you tell me what the risks are and which are the systems that are connected to this thing that are going to break. And he actually fired people who couldn't do it, which was pretty crazy. That's a Canadian bank for you. When the shit's hitting the fan, big decisions have to be made. But it was a picture. It was a picture that everybody was looking at. So, if you're doing pictures in Confluence, do more of them, and use them as mechanisms to align teams to a common understanding. Because mostly, if you think about all the different characters we have in IT especially, everybody has a different frame of reference. To have different frames of reference to understand these issues. And I think that pictures are the perfect way to try to bring teams together of different tribes with different kind of mindsets and approaches to solve problems. So if you like what you see, you like all that analysis, come Wednesday night to our party. Please register because it's kind of filling up, and that's it. I'm 1 minute early. Any questions, guys?
One question. The installation count, the data you have from the installation count from the marketplace, do you think that these data are perfectly correct, or kind of like there's something left, like a hidden count of installation parts?
So it's a good question. On the cloud side, I think it's accurate because it's a metric which is precise. You either have a cloud Atlassian installation or you don't. On the server and data center side, it's different. And so the way that those installs get counted, and some of you may know more about this than I do, but this is my understanding, is that if the installation is publicly connected to the internet, if it's calling home, it counts. If it's locked behind a firewall, it doesn't count. So theoretically, that's undercounting. On the other hand, trials count. So we think they net each other out a fair bit. It's like everything else too. I guess if everybody has the same behind the firewall issue, let's put it this way: if everybody has the same behind the firewall issue, then the same effect happens to everybody. So would I say that when I put up the number of installations for XYZ product is absolutely accurate? No. I'd say, but it's pretty good.
And the trials are counted without the time frame? So first count stays in the installation count forever?
I don't think so. I think they expire. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe, are there any app vendors here who can comment on that one? Yeah.
It goes down once the trial is in.
Do you have a question, sorry?
No, I was just answering.
Yeah.
It goes down once the
Right.
trial.
Right. Okay, perfect.
But there's another additional point on cloud, because in cloud you have also a deactivated status, for instance. And this counted the numbers. So we made it on one of our free apps, 1,200 installs, at the end 600 active customers. The rest was not active.
Yeah, that's current.
Okay. Well, we'll dig into that a little bit more then. Yeah.
These are really good numbers.
Another question? Yeah.
Yeah, so it was specifically related to cloud version. So you had the slide on the version tracking. So I'm not sure about Forge, but at least to connect, what happens is the version usually updates, either it will be manually updated or it will make a change in the Atlassian connect. So basically what happens is, specifically for us, for example, we make bi-monthly releases. We might have a blog post on it, but we will not track on the marketplace. So I think that is also a data quality issue you guys might have.
Right.
With the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we know there are issues with version tracking in cloud because they don't break them out the same way as they break them out on data center and server. Yeah. We can talk to you about that in a sec. Joseph's the guy who knows all the answers. Anything else, guys? Well, sign up for Wednesday night if you're interested in the bigger picture. Thanks very much.